The most powerful force on earth is a human soul on fire. You have a deep ache in your soul for something more, to come alive, to let your passion pour from you like an endless well. When your passion comes alive, the magnificence buried deep inside of you is unleashed. Gifts and talents you never realized surface as your life unfolds like poetry. You can do hard things. I can show you how. This is Thrive Yoga Fit Transformational Coaching, where I teach you how to heal yourself from the inside out. Welcome back to Thrive Yoga Fit Transformational Coaching. This is Erin. Hello, everyone. So this podcast is very special. Essentially, my friend Ray Gardner and I got together and just had a very deep spiritual discussion, and we decided to hit the record button. So in this podcast, we talk about different aspects of self-care and I know that's been talked about so much, but how challenging it is balancing out the different layers. For example, if you're taking care of the physical, maybe you are ignoring your mental, right? And maybe you're ignoring your emotional. Maybe you need to really get into your belief systems because they're just causing all the other layers of your being to be in constant chaos. So I hope that you enjoyed this kind of impromptu podcast, and you are the first people to hear this. I am doing a yoga teacher training in India. It is happening in June 14th to the 28th. I am so excited. I booked an entire shala for everyone. You get to work with some of the teachers that I worked with and work with me, of course, very closely. The rest of the teacher training can be done online or in person in modules starting in February. So if you're interested in this, I already have half a dozen people that want to sign up. So email me, Erin@erincoach.com. We haven't even got a capture page up for this yet, but I'm only taking 16 people. If you would like to come, it does include a pretty thorough interview process because, well, we're going to be going international and we're going to be spending 2 weeks together. So I need to make sure that everything is good, chemistry-wise, as well as personal goals, and make sure everything's in alignment. I hope that you, again, receive this podcast well and enjoy the rest of your day. Namaste.
How do you spend time learning these tools? I don't know. I just think the biggest thing is like what you said.
Spend time learning them and then like applying them and having a balanced life and having boundaries and things.
Yes.
It's so fucking hard.
That's what I would, if anything, I would love to talk about that, is just because it's like from every reason why we just talked about it. Like, you know what I'm saying? So it's like, how do you exist in a world where you're growing and some of the people around you not?
Oof, yeah, that's a good topic.
That's like, you know what I'm saying?
That's hard because like I was thinking about this today. Like sometimes for me it's lonely because honestly, because like I mean you want to be compassionate. And by the way, you know, sometimes friendship, like, or relationships, intimate relationships, it's like one person's growing and like it gets to kind of like here and like you're getting a little frustrated, you're trying to encourage, and that person's going through this period of inertia. It's called tamas in yoga. So tamas, the occult exists in tamas. What does that mean? Think of like a caterpillar in a cocoon. Okay. Right? So they go into this deep state of inertia. Right? They're kind of coiled up around themselves, right? They're reconstructing their DNA. They're pulling out different parts that work, that don't, to like transform into something. So sometimes like inertia and like people pulling into themselves is kind of hard to read. It looks, they might be growing, but it's not that obvious.
Stop.
Right? And here we are, we're like, hey, like you got to open up. Like I want to stay connected to you, blah, 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 because otherwise we're growing apart. And then all of a sudden, you know, just when you're like, oh, maybe this will never happen, your friend's like, hey, guess what? I started reading this book. And I started like, right? So I think it's hard. You have to have a lot of discernment as far as being compassionate. You know, am I feeling like unreasonably angry at them because they're not growing? And if so, like, maybe that's less about them and it's more about me. For me, like I was talking about a situation with a friend earlier, you come to a point where you just feel kind of like, this is them. It's sort of like it's a them problem. like the song, it's a them problem. But like compassionately, like, I trust in you to be able to solve your problem. I personally, I can hold space, but I have my own stuff coming up. You know, I'm drawing in different people too, because we are like magnets for people. Right? So I think it's really important for us to keep our close circle, a bunch of people that are interested in inner growth, that will call us on our patterns, and we will compassionately also, hey, I've noticed you do this every time, like, it seems like you withdraw every time we have an uncomfortable conversation.
Solid.
Right? Here's something that I learned in Costa Rica. Just, I won't go into too much detail here, but I had a student who had some like PTSD stuff come up, and it was very hard to deal with. I've dealt with all kinds of spiritual uprisings in the programs and the things that I do, but this one was very special. One thing that I think is really important as far as relationships, as far as like a measurement tool, as far as are they growing with me? Are they on this path? Is, can they receive feedback? One. Because some people are like, nope. Right? And then you're like, what do we do with that? Right? As a friend, and like giving it or receiving. I don't know what to do with that. Okay.
Because immediately you're like, this space is not safe, so I can't. Say no.
Yeah, there's not a transfer of energy.
It starts to grow organically.
Exactly. Yeah, and it's sort of like, all right, well, you're putting down the wall. There's nothing that can be done here. I'm going to walk away then, because I'm not going to like be banging at the wall. So one thing is receiving critical feedback. And that's going to be a precursor for doing any of my trainings and programs from now on.
Solid.
But another thing is taking that feedback and, discerning, applying it to their lives, especially when you have conscious individuals that are offering you, they've seen certain patterns, they call it out, you have a conversation and you're bobbing your head to it like, yeah, that is true, that's something I want to work on. And then part two is like, working on it. You know about patterns, you're aware of them, but if you're not changing them, then you're like ending up in this like big dark hole, and you're like, but why am I here? And we're like, we both fucking know why you're there, yo. Like, we talked about that shit 50 times. Remember the fucking 10 tools we took. Right. So this is, from the perspective of someone who had a huge journey and saw some shit. And then we were just talking about how we are trying to keep ourselves in this state of inspiration, creativity, motivation. You have to protect that. You have to protect that. Again, compassion for those who suffer. We spread our joy, we spread our light, but we have to have boundaries. We have to say no. We have to, you want to surround yourself with people who give back to you, that fill up your cup. That is the thing.
Yeah, I think you hit it on those. I think, well, first I want to ask, at what point, if you can give an example of a situation without being super specific or anything like that, because one thing I think about is like, when is the point of hard boundary? Like, you know what I'm saying? Because like we give. I got my thoughts, but I'd be curious of yours first. Of when you know that it's like, just not really serving me no more, and they are not in a space to do the work. Because part of me, I'm like, they're not going to do it. Well, once it becomes painful enough, they tend to do something about it. And it's like, you could have did that years ago. But like for you, what's the sign? Well, as you grow, right? As you grow, I used to be a person that'd be like, I used to have so many circles that I thought that my circle was always just going to be big by default. If I got a circle in every state and it might be 2 people, but 2 times 50, I still was going to be, that was like my thought. You know what I'm saying? But like, as I start this lifetime of like growing mentally and physically and spiritually.
With the family and with the,
yes.
With the business, with the wife, yeah.
I realized no matter how big of a circle that I have or had, the amount of people that's always trying to grow is the same percentage.
That's a good point. Yeah, so then it's like, all right, well, I need to, I'm going to say, like, trim the fat, so to speak. Mm-hmm. It's, if some people have dug their heels in and they don't want to grow and they want to, and sometimes people just have to learn their journey in a different way.
So
now, if they're starting to take it out on you, right? If they're starting to, take it out on you and then not want to talk about it, like, for example, throwing adult tantrums, that is a hard no for me. I refuse to be treated that way, especially if, and okay, people have mistakes, people have bad days. I get it. I've had that too. And then they're not willing to talk about it again. Mm-hmm. And then they're not willing to change the behavior. That is, a relationship is a choice. It's not just like, oh, we're homies now, like you're stuck with me.
Yeah.
It's not that way.
Yeah.
It's a conscious choice, right?
And thank God it's a choice.
Right? Yeah, I'm saying.
Even family.
Yeah, it really is.
It really is.
There's, you might always be related by blood, but as far as a relationship, that is still a choice and it takes effort. And then, talking about mental, emotional, spiritual hygiene, right? So we brush our teeth, right? We work out, right? We eat certain foods. Like, we take this as like, if you want to be healthy, these are probably part of the Venn diagram overlap that you need to address. Solid. Right? So, but it's less common in Western culture to recognize that, oh yeah, maybe I need to meditate to like kind of like not grab onto every single thought. Maybe I need to, do some like breath work to help move my energy body. So in yoga therapy, there is something called the Maha Pancha Koshas. So Maha is great, Pancha is 5, Koshas are sheaths. And this makes up the architecture of who we are down to our core, from like energetics to mind. So the outermost layer is the physical. Okay. How do we treat that, right? Exercise, right? Eating the proper food, getting the proper rest, sunlight, like the basics, right? So if you're taking care of that layer, that's good. But we know people who they take care of that layer, but they don't want to go inward, right? And they're like, but I do all the things, like I drink all the water and I'm working out, right? And that's great. And that takes a lot of effort, right? But then the next layer is like energetics. Like, if you have like constant like emotional uprisings and you're not taking care of that aspect of you, if you are putting yourself into very stressful situations and you're unaware of your state at any given time, that is something to consider, right? It's just like, and how do we know the difference with something like this if it's a little fuzzy, this concept? If you've ever walked into a temple or a church or somewhere where there is some spiritual healing happening, it has a certain energy. Yeah. It has a certain peace. Yeah. Right? So if you're not creating that same peace and energy on the inside because you are sacred scripture, you are a sacred temple, right? So if you're not taking care of that and there's just like, you have the energy of like a fast food restaurant. True.
Right?
Like it's a certain, it has an impact, and we have to be accountable for that. So I'll just, just to continue conversations, the Manamaya Kosha is of the mind. If you're not controlling your mind, if you're not looking at your thoughts, you have shitty ass thoughts, you have shitty ass reality. Gotcha. Okay. The Vijnanamaya Kosha is our belief systems. If you think I'm not good enough, I'll never be loved. What I do is not good enough. Guess what? You're going to create that reality because that's a deeper layer of existence. Solid. And that is covering up your true essence, which is the Anandamaya Kosha. Ananda is bliss body. And it's like when we're in that joy, we're in that passion, we're in that love. Yeah. And when we tap into that, we have almost like an endless well of energy to give. The only thing is that we have to like travel through those layers to remember who we are. And to do that, we have to have certain practices in place that is completely self-guided. Nobody's shaking their finger at you and making you do all these things. There's guidance. There's, and actually today is Guru Puranam. It's an Indian holiday, which it gives love and respect and salutations to our teachers and gurus. So it's actually that we're talking about all this.
Oh, yeah, damn, that's dope.
So that was a lot.
Yeah.
I'll wrap it up by saying, like, there's a lot of layers to the human existence. And if we want to have a high quality life and we want to be surrounded by people who are like that, we have to do our work. And if we are doing our work, right, it's like we want to keep our the people around us sort of in that space too, because that's spiritual community.
Yeah, I think one of the greatest things is something that, like, you probably didn't say this to me with no type of thought.
Oh,
I'm like, you said it, but
what did I say?
And this is just completely nothing. But I remember thinking, like, what you and I do are the same yet different. Right? So, like, in my gym, like, whenever you hear, like, you listen to me.
I do.
Not your body. Like, you know what I'm saying? When I say,
you're the guru.
Here go your weight. This is what you're going to do with it. And that's it. It's no other. In here, you listen to your body. Which is something that I wasn't, like, used to. Like, like, as an athlete, you always just trying to question that. Like, are you hurt or are you injured? Like, so it's like, it's one of them things that you always constantly being like, all right, like, am I injured, torn a meniscus or torn Achilles, or am I hurt?
Yeah.
Can I keep going?
That takes a high level of critical thinking and discernment.
And this was the thing. All you said was yoga is a practice and it's something that you can continuously do. And I never thought about it like that. Like, so, like, this journey is a practice. And anybody that's in the process of practicing, I don't believe I have the ability to judge them on presently how that practice is going. So one thing I've been trying to be aware of is what I do for a living is not tell people how to do exercise. It's just, how do I get the most out of that person? Where I'm struggling at sometimes is you still got people that comes in with a negative choice of thought processes.
Yeah, like how you said choice, because at some level, even if it's not conscious, they chose that. Yeah.
Every time. Yeah. So, like, I have one or two people, not a lot of people that's always choosing, hey, how you doing? All right, hey, how was your day? All right, how was your weekend? Like, every day you choosing this. And so for me, I did two things. One, I stopped asking them how they were doing, and I guided it. Hey, Erin, tell me something good that happened over the weekend. Hey, tell me one thing that happened today that was awesome.
Yeah, because the default would be like, oh, this terrible thing that happened.
They still try to go there. And I said, oh, I don't think I asked you that.
That wasn't part of the question.
That wasn't a part of that. Because that consistent energy, as you said, like, it gets me. Because one thing being a coach does is it puts you in practice in front of everybody every day.
Yep.
That's why most people think that spiritual healers or coaches are always okay. That's not true. But we always practicing being okay. So for us, we wouldn't feel like we doing our community justice to be like, hey, Ray, although we might feel that, and although we might communicate that, it don't sound consistent of being, it sounds like, today is probably not my best day, but I'm always give my best effort.
Right. Like
it would sound like that.
Yeah. Like today I'm a 4 out of 10.
Yes.
But like, I'm acknowledging that, I'm accepting that, I'm going to be the best damn 4 I can be.
Yes.
Type of thinking.
Yes.
Right? It's not just like wallow in it. It's like, this is what it is. We're putting it out there and let's work through it together.
Yes.
This is real life application of the tools.
So how do you deal with somebody that's in your community, because it's easier when it's a friend, because you really choosing them.
Yeah.
Then you set boundaries. You talk a little less. You call a little less. You communicate a little less. You can set a strict boundary. But what do you do when it's a energy vacuumer? Shall I say? That's consistently somebody that you working with and in your community. And I want to create a scenario that you also understand that here is more mental and spiritual. The gym sometimes can be an outlet to ignore. So for me, sometimes I find it a little bit more difficult because you're really not in the space, because you come here as a space to ignore and forget. Where I feel, and I could be wrong, so correct me as you communicating this, I feel like here you come in here for a certain mentality or something, a certain practice of strict mental health. I think we get it on the back end with endorphin boosters and stuff like that as you're going through physical exercise. But it's a reason why we talk about, like, when you are yoga intense for 3 months, then it's hard to get up to this hypeness.
Yeah, it's a lot, after being in India for like a month and change, and then being in Costa Rica and Yoga Land, and then coming back here, and after a few days going to a roller derby practice, it was just a complete different world. And I've changed and I've shifted, so I have to navigate this a little bit different. But to answer your question, now, if there's somebody in your community that, you're not like exactly like homies with, but like they're part of your community. One question that I like to ask, and I can phrase this in 2 ways. One is asking people, like, what's your internal weather report? Like, just kind of like publicly, like, just so if you went around the room and you said, like, in 10 words or less, give me an inner weather report, like boom, 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 boom. Because here's the thing too, and you'll have to enforce this, because some people, if they're sucked up in their own pain, they're gonna like, oh, I have a microphone, give me a spotlight, give me a violin. I'm gonna take up 20 minutes of this class. Yeah. I heard so you have to just be like, we have a bell, ting, every 10 seconds, doesn't matter who it is, ting, you hear that bell, ting, inner weather report. Why we're doing this is so you can become aware of what your internal state is, and then you can also become aware of your community's internal state, and maybe you can even have a thought of, how is my energy impacting my community? Because it's sort of like a way to have accouability and not necessarily call out, but more of an invitation to share. And then sometimes, like, you go around the room, some people might say, I'm sad today, I'm dealing with my mom, blah, blah, blah. But you know what, I'm here and I have a good attitude. Ting! Solid. Like, that could give, just by sharing, that could give your community ideas of, like, hey, they're sad too, but, like, hey, look, they're redirecting themselves. Maybe I could do that. Like, Yeah. I used to do this thing, maybe after this conversation, maybe I'll invite it back, but at the beginning of yoga class, I would go around sometimes and I would say, set an intention word, something that you want to achieve, maybe a state that you want to achieve, and people say happiness, relief, kindness, relaxation, right? So if you think about that, that gives a little clue into if somebody is wanting relaxation, it's probably because they feel stressed, right? If someone wants to feel happy, maybe they feel a little sad, right? So that gives a little peek in. That's one thing that I would offer, because energetic hygiene for a community is a thing. And I am very tuned in. I've kicked people out of my studio before. I've had conversations, because it's sort of like the old saying, one rotten apple ruins the bunch. Solid. In my yoga teacher trainings, things come up and I talk about it. And again, if people aren't receptive or they don't want to be taught by me, or they shut down, it's like, well, you're here in a training, like, you signed up for this. If you don't let me in, then you're not participating, and that's going to affect everyone else's process, and I need you to be accountable for that. So here's your last chance. You don't have to tell me your freaking life history. But if you are withdrawing, and even because it's uncomfortable, you don't want to go there, then you are withdrawing from the course.
Heard.
And that is energetic accountability. One more thing I want to offer. If you, let's say you have someone that just, they're like, they don't get it. They're just like, right? The eyes glaze over. They're like, I'm fine. Like, okay, you're not, because you know, you're impacting our community. Private conversation sometimes, like, hey, listen, I have a need for transparency. I have a need for honesty. I have a need for connection. I have a need for, I don't know, something like energetic accountability. Like there's something that's been going on. I just want to say it is impacting me. It is impacting the space. And I want to see if we can open this up in a safe, compassionate way so that we can grow together.
Solid.
Right? So that's more uncomfortable. Yeah. And we're only, you know, one person, our community, right? So it's like having private meetings with everyone. It's like, ugh. Yeah. But if there's someone who is creating that much of a ruckus, either in our lives or another, you know, our community's lives, it's like, how much mental real estate are they taking up in our mind? Yeah. You know, how much better would it feel if they either changed their state and took accountability, or maybe they maybe it's not a good fit for our community anymore. Yeah. I think as leaders, we are protectors of our space. Yeah. And I think that sometimes we have to do that. Yeah. I mean, it's not like your favorite part of the job. But that's what a strong leader does. I think couldn't been said better than that. You know me for years, so that wouldn't be like my strongest suit, like, you know. But the more I grow, the more I become locked in. Or when we talk about boundaries a lot of times is hurtful to people that don't want to respect them. But essentially, boundaries is a better way for you to actually connect. Yeah, like, boundaries can save relationships. And, you know, sometimes I get nervous when I see a person that has zero boundaries. Like, they've never spoken up, and I'm, you know, I kind of don't know what's too much, what's enough. And sometimes I'll, like, check in. I'm like, are you sure this is okay? You seem a little uncomfortable. Yeah. So it's that fine line of, like, trusting that people will speak their needs. But a lot of people don't know how to even have needs or speak their needs. They're not aware of them. Yes. So on that end, maybe it's helpful to hear from this perspective for our listeners, but I appreciate when people have boundaries, because I know what I could ask. I'll give an example. My studio manager, Laura, she went through yoga teacher training. I would ask her to sub sometimes with my one client, Sam. And I would ask her and she would say no. And I'd ask her. And to me, I'm like, you're a little bit nervous to show up to this. Yeah. Like, let me because that's what I do with some people. And she usually receives it. And she set a boundary. She's like, hey, could you please stop asking me? Because I hate telling you no. And she said the reason. When we practice yoga with him, his dogs are everywhere and they're like always licking her, and she's like, and it's gross and I don't like it. She's like, so I hate to keep telling you no. If you ask me, you know, I'm gonna say no, but I don't want to go there anymore, because she had to keep reinforcing that boundary with me. When she made it clear, I was like, oh, I get it now. Like, and that was actually a relief to me, because in my mind I'm like, well, how come you keep saying no? Like, you know, like, I'm going to push you. Yeah. Because that's just my nature with the people around me. Yeah. But then when I knew her boundary, I was like, oh, that makes sense. So for me, if there's someone that, you know, is continually sort of pushing, like, just not reading my needs and continually just doing something that I might perceive as disrespectful, or, you know, why I want to set a boundary. If I look at myself, I'm like, okay, I haven't actually addressed this, I immediately kind of wipe the board clean. Yeah. Right? If you're like, oh, this person's been getting underneath my skin, I'm like, Erin, have you said anything about it? Stop. And if I haven't, you got to wipe that board clean, because that's not on them. Yeah. They might just not be reading all of your needs, whatnot. You got to wipe that clean. Mm-hmm. Then it makes it much easier to have a conversation with and be like, hey, listen, I know that you're showing up to the gym like 20 minutes early, and I know that, like, that's probably good for you to get settled in and whatnot, but, like, you know, I really need that time. I don't have a lot of time now with the kids, with, you know, with family with running this. So I really need that time to kind of get my head straight and drop in for the next class. So I appreciate your enthusiasm, but you know, like I'll ask, like, I'm going to open up the door 5 minutes before class starts or whatever it is. And I'm saying this example for you and you're smiling at me.
Cut, please.
Yeah. That's a wrap.
Yeah.
You know, cause I think that when you're coming at it from a place of love,
yeah,
and you're also like, I have needs, and you're being a little bit vulnerable, right? You're like, I have a need for space. Like, this has nothing to do with you, right? I have a need for space. I have a need for time. I have a need to get my head clear before I teach this next class, because I bring it. Like, you do. Every class you're in some way you bring it, which is like amazing. But that takes a certain level of energy. So and you know, it's like, once you address that boundary, imagine if they actually started doing that and you're like, oh wow, this feels so much better. I have much nicer feelings towards you. Whereas if it's completely unaddressed and they're just like coming in 20 minutes, just looking at you, like rolling on the fucking thing and like doing weird exercises and you're just like, how could you not know that this pissing me off, right? Can't you see the like steam coming out of my head?
Yeah, and I used to be doing personal training and people would jump in on a conversation. It's like, like, you know what I'm saying? So it's just been super fascinating for me, because I believed it, but I didn't experience it. And once I started to experience it, what I've done for my life is crazy. It almost makes you just excited to set boundaries in a weird way. Once you get good at it. I think the biggest thing is people don't set boundaries is because they're afraid of, they subliminally know that the relationship probably was one-sided for a long time and it's probably going to end.
Yeah.
And that's what I had to really discover with myself. So like, it's one thing that, like, you know, I get excited to set boundaries with people that I know that's going to set them. Like, you know, I think it's crazy because I set 2 boundaries, both of the people named Aaron. One is you, one is Aaron Besall. Like, you know, and it's funny because, and it wasn't even really a boundary. It was really just explaining my thoughts. But I didn't have a thought of being like, ugh. Like, Aaron was like, she was coming in, I was doing this kids camp, and I said, I'm going to have all the parents outside because the kids like get distracted and stuff like that when they did. So like I said, hey, when you drop the kid off, drop them off inside, and then I'm gonna have everybody in the car. Like, and I appreciate it. And she did that. The problem is all the other parents was inside.
She told me about that. So you're just like sitting in your car alone.
And I feel horrible because once stuff started going in, right away I realized that that the parents being there was actually beneficial because they had the opportunity to see how they was coached.
Yeah.
I did set boundaries with parents as they would communicate to the kids. I'm like, oh, did you want to coach?
Yeah.
Like, you know, and I learned probably the biggest way for me is I'm not a super serious person. And so when I was learning about boundaries, I felt like it had to be like a serious thing. And it's like some deep conversation that I'm like, Aaron, listen here. And I realized that, like, for me, I can still be myself. So I can set a boundary and say, yo, hey, this is my student right now. Please allow me to coach. Or I can still say with a different type of energy and be like, oh yeah, I didn't know you was coaching today. You coaching today? Or, you know, that's a funnier way of still saying, hey, and it's way more authentic for my personality. And it don't make me feel like if I have to be hard with.
Some people do need hard though. Some people just don't get it. Like, they think you're being funny. Other people that like are tuned in, they're like, oh, I got you. Like, they'll get it.
Yeah.
So I could see, I mean, that's brilliant to kind of like use it in a way that, you know, serves your personality and your character. And you're funny as hell. So it's even a bonus if like you can have them become a little bit self-aware of their actions, have a little laugh, and then also like change that. Win-win. Amazing. Yeah,
well, I think I did it for my own, like, I needed a couple wins. Because going from no boundaries to one boundary was too big of a leap. So like I needed soft boundaries to make me feel like I was winning.
Oh.
And it allowed me to actually set a real boundary. Like, you know what I'm saying? So like an uncomfortable one. Mm-hmm. Like I set one with my mom because like I think a lot of times, and I don't know if this is a boundary more than just saying what I feel. Cause my mom was like, now that I have a son, my mom would say stuff like, yo, like it's about the baby, like it's not about you no more and stuff like that. And that just made me feel uneasy. And when somebody say it's not about me, I would take really offense because I'm like, have you seen my life? Like, I know I get all this attention and stuff like that. But the reason why people love me is because I connect with them first. I love them first a lot of times. So like, and I'm always of service for the most part.
And she was speaking from her perspective, right? Which isn't necessarily the correct one.
So normally I would just eat that up and don't say nothing. And I told her, I said, hey, I said, I would appreciate if you didn't, I'll appreciate if you be more thoughtful when you say things like this. And then I explained to her, I'm like, as a brand new father, I'm already trying to navigate this world of less attention. Like, you know, meaning that like nobody really asks me how I'm doing anymore. They always, how's the baby? Which is cool, but I'm a firm believer that two things can exist in the same space.
Yeah, your feelings can matter, and the baby's feelings and state can matter, and Julian's feelings and state can matter. And it's not just, I mean that's not a good feeling to. Yeah. It's like, oh, okay, no, now you're kind of pushed like by the waist bin over here. Yeah. So it's like, that wasn't her intentions. Well, yeah, of course that wasn't her intentions.
Yeah, but I normally wouldn't say nothing though.
But in that, she's speaking from her perspective of how she's treated herself, her inner dialogue, right? So it's like,
and a lot of women do that.
Oh, of course. Almost everybody does.
Shit.
Right? Yeah.
The amount of women it's not about you no more. And like, I mean, and it's like, just imagine being already in the space where you're just trying to navigate this. All right. And it's certain things that have to happen. My wife have to pay more attention to the baby at this point.
Yeah, of course.
Right. Physically, the baby needs her.
Yes.
Like, you know, and like mentally, we trying to keep this thing alive that has no damn direction manual. Like, it's literally like, hey, take this thing. And it's like, what is this thing? Give it milk. All right, breastfeed, no formula. I don't know, figure it out. Peace. Like, and then,
I need a break. Peace.
And the whole world know that this thing exists.
Yeah.
And you just trying every day to keep this thing alive. Like, you know what I'm saying? So it's already this thing of navigating it. So it's like the amount of, and it's funny because like guys really just don't give a shit. So like it's the women that say these things speaking from their perspective, and the guys really don't say nothing. Like they barely ask me what the baby is. Like, you know what I'm saying? Like, and even I found myself guilty of doing that to my guy friends when I didn't have a kid.
Well, yeah, because you didn't have the perspective that you have now.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
And now you might be like, how's your mental health, man? Like,
bro. Now I call randomly, hey, bro, just checking in. You good?
Yeah, you good?
All right, what's your weather report?
Yeah. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. Cloudy as hell.
You want to take a nap together on the phone?
Yeah. Babe, who is you on FaceTime with? All right, Charles. Yeah, bro. So it is. But it's exciting whenever you get an opportunity to explore the world of boundaries. One question I wanted to ask you as I navigate this world of growth, right? This is my thought. I don't know if it's true or not. I don't believe...
This feels like a game. This is my thought.
Yeah, I know.
I don't know if it's true or not. Hit the red or yellow.
Yeah. Pick and choose. You're going to die either way. Nah. So like as I'm navigating this growth, I feel like it's impossible or damn near impossible to have a intimate relationship with someone that isn't practicing at all on working on themselves. Would you agree or disagree? What's your perspective on it?
I hear asking me this at a time where I'm really for me to connect with people, your heart has to be open. If you shut your heart down, and then you want me to connect with the chaotic, the winds whipping around state of your mind, I don't connect in that way. So I really resonate with what you said as far as people aren't doing their inner work. I mean, we can still love them, right?
Mm-hmm.
We can still love them, pour all the love towards them energetically, but we don't have to have them actively in our lives, right? It's like if we think, well, why do you want to hang out with me? Like, yeah, there's sincere love there, yeah, but like, you probably know that by hanging out with me, like I have a positive perspective and I shift, like it's a thing, like people want to hang out with people that lift them up.
Yeah.
Imagine that.
Surprise!
Yeah. So yeah, if you're just constantly in this, and again, I have sympathy and compassion for people who are in depressive circles, who are going through transitions in their life, and it's difficult. Like I have that compassion, and I can hold space for that sometimes, but like, there's a difference between being sucked in this like black hole of not looking at yourself and just to like you're trying to use tools and you're reaching out for lifelines sometimes. That's very, very different energy. Mm-hmm. It's less of like you said, the word like an energy sucker or energy
vampire sucker.
What it is. That it's just not sustainable. It's not sustainable for anyone. And if you look at, just me as a yogi, my ethics are like, what's our purpose of being here, right? Nobody fucking knows, right? But like maybe part of it could be something like you were put on this earth to make a difference. So. You were put on this earth to help lift people up. You were put on this earth to help people feel good in different ways, right? And what's the easiest and most sustainable way to do that? Start with you. If you're not starting with you, it's going to come off as insincere. It's going to come off arrogant. There's going to be ego tied to it. It's just not from a clean place. Yeah. So it's not sustainable. The relationship is not sustainable if one person's doing the work, one person's not. That's when you see people get divorces. That's when you see people, friendship ends. People distance themselves. So... it's frustrating because, again, we can love them. It's like, please, you said something earlier, like, please believe that I love you. Yeah. Please believe that I love you, because that is so true. Yeah. But I can choose not to be around you. Yeah. It's a lot. And at this point in my life, I'm giving so much positive energy out there. I need someone to pour back into me. Yeah. I think that's reasonable. Yeah. I don't think that's cold. I think that if you ask anyone, they'd be like, well, yeah, of course. Yeah. Right? So.
Till they in the situation. Then it's like, Erin, I can believe what she said.
Yeah. Like, can you believe it? Dear diary.
Yeah, exactly.
She's a bitch.
Exactly.
Okay, whatever. I'm a bitch then. I don't
care. Well, like, and even how, like, I consume things, right? So I was like, I started to ask myself one question. This question probably just changed my life, to be honest. It allows me to be always in a place of gratitude and peace. And I'm always wrestling in between it. I believe that whenever somebody is at its maximum capacity of like the downside of their mental health, like when somebody is really struggling, right, like really struggling mentally, they hurt you at the level that they currently at. Yeah. So when the people said like the worst thing about you is because they was at the worst place mentally. Yeah. And it's times that people say stuff like, I was a narcissist.
I've gotten that too.
Yeah. And one thing I ask myself now is, because I'm a firm believer that nobody can make you feel anyway.
Right. Sure.
Nobody can make you feel that way. Yeah. So immediately when you say something and I feel a certain way negatively, the very first thing I ask myself is, why did that trigger me? Like, because what we typically do, especially as men, we say, I don't give a shit about that. What the hell with her? Don't give a damn what she talking about. I don't care what nobody think.
Get away from me.
Yeah, shut up. Like, anytime somebody say, I don't care what nobody think, that's the biggest red flag ever. Yeah. It's like, Charles, what's really going on, man? Come on, we good. Like, you know what I'm saying? So, like, and it's especially like this with men, is because we choose not to be vulnerable because society has a way of, like, beating us down where we have to be a man, stop crying. And so for me, I believe that, like, you can't make me feel a certain way. So immediately when you say something to me, I always ask myself, why did that trigger me? For me, 90% of the times I've been finding that, like, when I ask myself and I start breaking it down, it tends to get to a part that, like, it's my personality trait that I'm a people pleaser. And, like, so, like, a lot of it is, even though I know my intentions was this, I still want them to like me. So I'm like, yo, like, no, I said believe that I love you. Like, you got to show me that too. And you got to, like, feel that too. And, like, you got to tell me that you believe me and your actions and energy. And now I'm just getting to a place that, like, whenever I ask myself, like, why did that trigger me? I get to that people pleasing stance. And then at that point, I realize a lot of times I'm like, I'm sincere. I do enough work to be like, oh man, like, I actually love being proved wrong a lot of times, or I like being in the wrong because it's a way to grow. And I'll be like, oh, you know what? Like, this was my intentions. I had no idea that you was going to take it like that. I sincerely apologize. I would feel the same way. I love those situations. But what happens a lot, because I do a lot of work on myself, I end up being like, I'm not going to say it just to say it. And truthfully, the situation don't have nothing to do with me. You hurting inside. And I don't have really the space to go through the whole thing, and because that can be an hour or two depending on if you want to get it.
There's something to be said about when people are in that space, they're not going to receive it.
Solid.
Right? So, you know, the heart connected space is when people are open to receiving.
Solid.
For example, the first Yoga Sutra, Atta Yoga Nushasanam, there's different translations. When Yogi or Swami Satchitananda, he says that now as begins the exposition of yoga practice. Yoga is being present. Yoga is incorporating the 8 limb system into our lives of, like, truth and consciousness and bliss. But there's also a translation that says, I humbly bow to the sacred practice of yoga. And when we do that, we are releasing our ego and we're bowing so that we can listen to the whisper of our heart a little bit more clearly. And when people are in their own turmoil, it's like everything that they see, they cast, again, this hurt and this pain, and we can, with our own presence, be compassionate, but it doesn't mean that we have to sacrifice ourselves and jump into this black hole. We don't have the energy to do that. We have to show up for our communities. We have to show up for our families, right? So, and in regard to, you know, what you said was, like, awesome. Like, you're on a fucking roll.
I'm trying to be.
Yeah.
I put a lot of work in.
Yeah.
And I love it.
I can see that, actually, being away from you for 2 months. Like, we both kind of grew in a lot of ways.
Yeah.
Really awesome to come together like this.
I know.
You know, the whole...
It's wild sometimes, like, when we really just, it's like we need each other.
Yeah.
And it's like, I feel like, I don't know how you feel, but I feel like when you grow like this, you grow into a different planet.
Yeah.
And, like, the planet tends to be lonely.
Yeah, exactly.
But when you can see that motherfucker over there and you're like, hey, shit, it's a voice.
Yeah. Let's wag tails together. Yeah. You know, in regards to if somebody says something and it does have a strong emotional response in us, it is good to, like, get curious, like you said, like, oh, why did I feel that way? That's interesting. Now, that's if someone were, like, hurling curse words at you all the time, profanities, like, at a certain point, they're going through the Rolodex, like, something's going to stick. So it's like, okay, we can look at that. But also, you have to choose your battles. So. You know, if you're around someone that's constantly just negative, whatnot, it's like, no, there's a certain point of energetic clearing, of emotional clearing, of space clearing, of protecting the energy of the community. I want to keep my energy clean and bright and happy as much as I can, right? But having the safety that we carry with us, so in the outside world, if people are that way, that we don't immediately become triggered. Now, if you feel something within you, it is something to look at. It's a bigger thing if somebody says something and you immediately, impulsively, like, fuck you.
Oh, yeah.
Like, oh, Okay, yeah, let's look at that right away.
Solid.
But if somebody says something and you feel like your heart clench a little bit, I think that's part of that is just being human.
Solid.
Right?
Yeah.
So if it happens all the time to everything, then you probably need to do some work. But if it's you know, somebody called me a piece of shit and you're like, yeah, that didn't feel good. Well, it's because they called you a piece of shit.
That's true. Yeah,
right?
yeah.
So we're not made of stone. We're human.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
Good points.
I just think even as we conversate about this, I think it's a sense for me of push pull. Like, I genuinely don't think I'm better than anybody.
Yeah.
So it's never coming from that space. As you grow, I think sometimes I mourn old relationships. Like, I'm like, this is probably it's not going to be beneficial until they decide, you know. And it's like, man, we've been friends since we was 7, and it's like, and I didn't notice that doing all this work in the last probably 4 or 5 years. Now it's healing me from past relationships. Like, I mean, I had friends that would just like drop me. I mean, I had a friend of mine that came to my wedding, and I remember him leaving, and he sent me the craziest video and said, like, I used him to make fun of him and embarrass him in front of everybody. And I was like, I just remember being like, hold on, wait. So I invited you. Not everybody got invited to my wedding. I invited you. You flew here. I rented a house on an island for people that didn't have the means to stay in a hotel or just wanted a different option. So I rented a house for you on the island. I invited you. I rented you a house just to make fun of you on one of the biggest days of my life that wasn't about anybody. But it was the craziest thing ever. And I just was like, what did I do? What did I do? And like, as I get older and I work through my own journey, it's like, I realized, I'm like, golly, man, you was going through a lot mentally. And maybe I would have had more space to talk about that then. But like, being on this journey is almost like fun to be able to identify that and then determine, like, is this something I want to embark on? Or honestly, with questions and stuff like that, we can really get people to think and heal people from the inside out. So it's a special place to be.
If they're willing to receive, if they're open to it, for sure. And I think those are the people that we want to keep around us. And the people that, you know, they're reactive and they're blaming others and, you know, they're not taking accountability. It's, that's, you know, it's sad, and we can still love them, but there's only so much time in the day. There's only one of each of us, right? I like to joke that in my next reincarnation, I want to have all the arms and eyes of Vishnu, because then I could get so much more done. That's just me. Trying to be everything to everyone. You can't be the head of every single circle. You know, I was actually, just to share a bit from my life, I was thinking about, you know, my derby career, and I'm thinking, wow, I'm so like much into yoga now, and then having that practice where I wasn't great, which I'm committed for the rest of the season. I'm going to put my all in, and I've decided to do that. But it's like, in my community and other communities, I serve in some way, you know, and it's like, I have to decide, do I want to serve a little bit in this community, right? And what's the best thing that I can offer my derby teammates? Well, maybe some of the mental, emotional, and spiritual hygiene that I know, right? Because if I go into a community, I'm going to raise the vibration. That's just what I do.
Solid.
Right? So I'm playing with things as far as like, how much butter do I have to put over this bread? Am I spreading myself too thin? Literally. So I want to do all the things. I think we both love hard, we love deep, we love big, you know, and we seem to have an endless well of love, which but there is, you know, we have to keep filling up our cups and doing our practices to keep that sort of vibrating out from us.
So the last question I'm gonna ask you is, when everything is all said and done, and your favorite person speaking about you at your funeral, like what would be something that you would wish that you are remembered for?
I think my answer is usually the same, and I think that's a good thing, because that means that I believe this is that I was kind, that I cared about people, that I made it known that I loved them and that I loved big, and I tried to encourage people, sometimes in sweet, kind ways with unconditional love, sometimes in slightly more fiery ways, the way that, you might like, come on, get your ass up off the floor. Like, I've seen that you had 5 drinks this weekend. You better be at the gym every day for each drink. Like, sometimes people receive in that way. So I think, being known as an adaptable teacher that gave her love and coated it, sometimes in sugar, sometimes in salt, depending on where the student was at, so that they could receive it in that way, that they needed. I think that takes a high level of discernment of spiritual awareness, but also keeping the mission the same. I want to show you love. I want to show you how to dig into yourself. And as far as the person that would be saying it, man, I have so many people that I love. But maybe that would just be the overall message.
Yeah, for sure.
Can we ask you the same thing?
I would think, if in the shortest version, I would, this is kind of hard because, like, my dad passed away. His birthday was, like, July 1st. So, like, I was thinking about this over the weekend, and it's like, and I spoke at my dad's funeral, and I remember being at his funeral, and I seen what impact looked like. Like, we typically don't, you can't see what the impact that you made on this world.
Sure.
Well, I was able to see it. And I remember thinking that as I was sitting there, it was 2009, so I was 20. And I only wanted to be 21 so I could have a drink with my dad at the bar. And, like, I remember the funeral home was 500 seats. And it was standing room only. All the seats was taken up. The entire outside, purely against fire code. It was like 800 people in there. Like, you know what I'm saying? Like, purely. And Detroit, you can get away with anything. But, like, I just remember seeing what impact looked like. And for me, I just remember the most important thing I want to do is have my funeral full. And so for me, if anybody was to say anything, it probably would make the biggest emotional hit is if somebody just said, like, yo, like, this is the dude who genuinely tried to be the best dad he can be, the best son he can be, the best trainer, and best athlete. The dude just genuinely tried to pure exhaustion to be the best version of himself, and whether he accomplished or not, well, you can tell because I filled out the fucking stadium. All right, like, you know what I'm saying?
What do you think?
Yeah. The whole stadium is, like, you know what I'm saying? The only person who had more people than this is Kobe Bryant. So, like, you know what I'm saying? So, like, it would mean a lot for me if the person would just say, yo, he genuinely tried in every aspect of life to bring out the best in every human being. And that'd be awesome.
Mine wasn't as natural as yours.
No, I also had some time to think about it. So, like, that's not like, you know, and I knew I was asking you that question.
Yeah.
So I was already kind of prepared if you asked me. And plus, I ask people the same question all the time. And it changes. The philosophy is the same, but I was like, how can I make it short?
Thank you so much for listening. If you want to support the podcast and if it's helping you, please consider writing a review. You can go to iTunes or Google Play, go into the search bar and type in Thrive Yoga Fit Transformational Coaching, scroll down, and you can leave a review. This helps other people to find me as well as bumps us up in the search ratings. Also, this podcast is sponsor-free, so that means we don't receive anything for doing it. If you feel so inclined and this podcast is helping to support you and you want to return the favor and help to support any production costs of the podcast, feel free to give a donation to a Venmo link, Thrive Yoga Fit, or PayPal, Erin at ErinCoach.com. If you don't have the means, don't worry about it. We're not going anywhere. You're all good. But if you would like to give back, you can give back in those ways. Thank you so much. Namaste.